This is the Good Neighbor Podcast, the place where local businesses and neighbors come together. Here's your host, Jeremy Wolf.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Good Neighbor Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Wolf, and today I'd like to welcome to the show. We're doing something a little bit differently. We're mixing things up a little bit. Our next guest, Matt Simmons, actually found his way on our calendar to come promote a new book that he's releasing soon. He's having he'll get into it. He's having a book promotion party over at the Barnes & Nobles in Pembroke Pines. The book is titled Find Your Hidden Treasure Chest. If I could speak today, we'd be in good shape, right, Matt? So I'd like to welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us, and I'm excited to get into this to learn more about the book and what you do. So, Matt, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Jeremy. It's a pleasure.
No, it's our pleasure, and thanks as always to our listeners. And hopefully you'll get some good stuff out of this today. So let's get into it. Let's start off by, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about the book Find Your Hidden Treasure Chest, and then we will go from there.
Sure. Well, I've written this book as a self-help book. It's designed obviously to help people, and there's a myth out there that wealth is a treat that's reserved simply for the rich. And that's just not true. It's actually the exact opposite. The fact of the matter is that most of the wealth in America was created by people coming from all walks of life. And they did it by investing. Interesting.
What inspired you to start writing? How did you, I guess, first find your unique voice as an author? How long have you been doing this? Is this your first book? How many books have you done? Let's get into the backstory behind this.
Well, I'm ex-Navy. I was on board 2 aircraft carriers, and I got started in correspondence at that time. I wrote a lot of correspondence. I've got a degree in business administration. I've started my own formed a business, started it, grew it, and eventually sold it. And I was also a surgical device sales rep. And while I was doing that, I began putting ideas together for a number of books that I am writing. And Find Your Hidden Treasure Chest is my first release. And it basically offers a new way. Half of all working families have $0 in the bank today, and they couldn't even afford a $400 unplanned expense. If it came around, they'd probably have to finance it. So the problem for all of these people everybody wants to have a future. Everybody wants to create their own wealth. But if you're living paycheck to paycheck and barely making ends meet, then these are the people who just can't find a way. So rather than ask people to go into their income and their paychecks to build this future, what Find Your Hidden Treasure Chest does, and here's a copy of my book right here, is it goes back into your expenses, and it finds those savings, and it takes you from start to finish. By the time you finish this book, if you don't have an investment account, you will have already created it with my help, and you will have already identified numerous avenues of your expenses, whether it's cutting back on driving through Starbucks. Maybe you've got some unused apps, ATM fees, your heat bill, your energy. There are over 60 different ideas in the book. What makes it really simple, Jeremy, is that you pick the ones that are easiest for you, and you can create hundreds of dollars that you can suddenly begin investing each month.
Very interesting. A lot of what you said is resonating with me right now, because building wealth, I've been thinking about this a lot lately. Building wealth, and it really comes down to your mindset and creating small habits, small daily habits and rituals over time that it can feel, when you're living paycheck to paycheck, it can feel impossible to get to the point where you are able to retire comfortably and have a wonderful nest egg set up. But that being said, if you start paying attention, and I've done this recently for me for the longest time, I didn't really track expenses. I just bought whatever I needed to buy, and I didn't really think much of it. But I really sat down and started to create a budget and craft a plan moving forward. And just the simple act of being cognizant of what you're spending and documenting it starts to make you think twice before you make needless expenses. And you start to question, do I even really need to buy this right now? Do I want to add this to my list of expenses? So just some of these little micro habits really help to open up your eyes in the future. Is that something that you cover in the book?
You're exactly on the money, Jeremy. It's about creating a habit. So a lot of us, when we get a job, we probably get something in the paperwork about do you want to begin contributing to a 401k program? And a lot of people go, oh, that looks interesting. Maybe I'll get going on that next year. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden you get into the routine of most people spend what they make. And a lot of people spend more than what they make. And they get into debt and things become difficult and you can never get started. And a lot of people wake up when they're 50 or 60 years old going, holy cow, I need to get started or I'm going to have to do all of my life.
Yeah. And it's so, I think this is, I've spoken to a lot of educators on the podcast. We talked about like the public school system. I think this is one of those things where these topics should be discussed with children from the earliest ages, right? From grade school, should be talking about these types of concepts, because the earlier you start with this, obviously, like with anything else, the easier it is, especially with starting to save and build these routines and habits. And we live in an instant gratification society, and it's such a fast-paced society, and we live in such abundance. There's so many places to throw money away. I mean, look, you can go on Amazon now and order something that you probably don't even need, and it gets delivered in the next hour or so, and then it ends up collecting dust in your house.
Sure, we're waiting on stuff right now. Yeah. It's very interesting, how you put that. It's all quite true. In fact, I think my inspiration for this book came in over and over trying to establish a habit with our three kids and making sure that they got off to a good start. And we're very proud of all three of them because they're all doing what they need to be doing. They're thinking about their future. But it's not easy for everybody. A lot of people are struggling. And I know that there are people out there right now who have no hope. They have no idea how they're going to create a successful, wealthy future. And I'm here to tell them that everybody can become wealthy. It's not a treat reserved for the rich.
Yep. We live in the land of opportunity. So this book that you're releasing, is this something that you've been thinking about writing for a long time and you've had bits and pieces of it? I'd imagine you have throughout your journey. Or did you sit down one day and said, I'm just going to walk us through the writing process? Like, how did this come to you? How did pen come to paper and the thoughts come from your head to put this down in your book?
Mm-hmm. Good question. I've always been a business person and I've always been a numbers person. And in the book, it starts off basically saying, and this is really how this started with me. I called a phone company. I got an outrageous bill. I called them up and said, look, this is ridiculous. We've got to find a way to save me some money. So we had our discussion, and a few minutes later I hung up and we had saved $20 a month. I was like, cool, $20 a month. Well, then I started looking forward and said, that's $240 a year. And that's $2,400 over the next 10 years. Mm. And then you do it by 30 years or 40 years. But that's just the money, the savings. What I hadn't figured and what I calculated next was, what if I didn't just have $20 a month? What if I put it into an investment account and let it grow at 7, 8, 9, 10%? The stock market basically has grown 10% per year since inception, including the Depression. When I did that math, all of a sudden, it was in $70,000 or $80,000 over the course of the next 40 years for putting in about 1/10 of the money. So that kind of was the inspiration. And I began looking, and I always have looked at expenses that way. And I found over 60 of them. And the book encourages everyone to look at what they spend, because people are spending money on things that I haven't even heard of. But I'll bet you they can find $5, $10, 15, or 20. And if you pick 5 or 10 little savings in your expenses and put them all together, now you're getting into the hundreds of dollars that you can donate towards your future. And guess what? It might hurt a little bit to put that money away. It feels like you're paying a bill, but guess what? It's still your money.
Mm-hmm.
It's growing, and you can do what you want with it.
Wise words. I like this. I'm definitely going to have to check this book out. It sounds like a wonderful resource guide. What were, and this, you said this was the first book you've ever authored or published, correct?
Mm-hmm.
What were some of the biggest challenges, I guess, you faced in putting the book together, and how did you overcome them?
Learning how to publish my own book was something else. I had a lot of help. Writing the book was the fun part. And when I got to the point of where I said, okay, we've got something here. Let's make this into a real book, and let's publish our first book. That's when the fun started. What I'm not good is what I learned about things like formatting, fonts, how many pages you can fit into a book. How big should the book be? It can be too thin, or it can be a Tolstoy novel and be 1,000 pages, and nobody would even want to pick it up. So I used some outside resources, and once we had it published, then it became, well, now how do we market this? So it's been a continuous learning process. And one of my little sayings that I like to follow is that I enjoy failing, because I know I've just learned something. And when you fail enough, you eventually begin to embrace failure, knowing that it's moving you in the right direction.
Absolutely. What advice would you give to aspiring authors out there who maybe they have some thoughts in their head, maybe they've written things down before and they just haven't taken that leap of faith and haven't, they've wanted to put something together and release a book and they just haven't quite done it? What advice could you share that got you over that?
I would say to write your book to the best of your ability, or at least the concept, and share it with friends and colleagues that you trust who will be honest with you. And when I began writing my book, it's easy to get caught up in yourself and say, wow, this is really something else. And then you let your wife and your friends and your colleagues help you out with it, and they come up with some fantastic ideas that lead you in the right direction. So use your community would be my best advice.
Yeah, the feedback is instrumental. Has the book already been released? Is it already out there, or is it going to be released soon?
The book is released. It's growing. We like what we see, and the biggest thing that I get out of it is I know every time somebody buys it, if they actually open it, they are probably going to find something that they know that they can do that will help them. I've had one other book signing, and we had a lot of parents come in that wanted to buy something for their child to try to get them going in the right direction. So it's probably a book that's best targeted for young adults, but anybody in the chain of a career who's struggling to find a way to put some money away can benefit from this book.
What's maybe been the most rewarding aspect thus far of sharing your work with others through this project?
It's knowing that the book is helping people. I've talked to people who have told me that they are now saving more money than they used to, and that their program is working. That's huge for me.
what books or authors have played an influence or have influenced your writing style, your perspective?
I can't point to anyone in particular. Interestingly, I am not the world's greatest reader. I don't go through a book every week. I might go through a few books in a year. So I'm probably not the person to ask that question. I've got a couple of kind of favorite authors with novels, but as far as something like this, you can name people like Dave Ramsey and that kind of thing that inspired me when I was younger, driving around doing my job, and you'd have your radio on, and I found Dave Ramsey, for instance, and I would say he was an inspiration or a help.
Nice. You mentioned, so you have this book signing coming up. Tell everybody a little bit about when that's happening and how they could attend.
Sure. The book signing is next Tuesday, October 15th from 2 to 3 p.m. There are 2 Barnes & Nobles in Pembroke Pines. This is the one called Pembroke Gardens. So I'll be there from 2 to 3. I would love to have a discussion with you if you're looking for ways to try to jumpstart your future. Love to sign a book for you, anything that you want to do, but I'll be there, and I'm here to help you.
All right. Sounds good. And where can our listeners find the book for purchase? Sure.
So the title of the book, once again, is Find Your Hidden Treasure Chest. So I've got a website. It's called findyourhiddentreasurechest.com. And we've got a blog on there. And if you want to come on and chat with me, feel free. I'd love to have a discussion with you online if you can't make the book signing, but sure would love to see you there if you can make it.
All right. Sounds good. And we will, of course, drop a link in the description to all of your information, as well as the date and location of the signing. So if anybody wants to go check it out, Matt doing some good things here for our community. So thank you for joining us. It's nice having you on the show.
Thank you very much. One last thing, the book is, of course, available on Amazon also. Find Your Hidden Treasure Chest, and it'll take you right to it.
Perfect. Sounds good. All right, Matt, pleasure, brother. Thanks for coming on the show.
Jeremy, I really appreciate this. Thank you so much.
Of course. And thanks, as always, to our listeners for tuning in, and we will catch everyone next time on the next episode of the Good Neighbor Podcast. Everyone take care. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Good Neighbor Podcast, Cooper City. To nominate your favorite local business to be featured on the show, go to gnpcoopercity.com. That's gnpcoopercity.com, or call 954-231-3170.